Good day, everyone. Welcome back to Entitled People subreddit with stories about those who think the rules don't apply to them and they should get whatever they want. Our first Reddit post was from Warrior White, entitled Customer Dislocated My Finger, Keeps on Shopping, Pre-COVID. I worked at a big club warehouse in customer service. The job was great and members were usually awesome, but now and then you find the most entitled SOBs to ever walk the earth. Based on the way they treated me and the others, I can only assume they don't even see us as human. We were only lifelike robots built to ring up their items and load their carts. One such incident that proves my assumption happened on a super busy Saturday. It was pouring outside. Members were fighting over parking close to the door, then bolting for the entrance as if their lives depended on it. As a courtesy to members, on rainy days we always had someone outside in front of the cart returning bay to dry off the carts. This day was so busy. Members were coming in faster than I could dry carts for them. Most were super nice and patient. They waited in line for a dry one and almost everyone thanked me. A few who were in a hurry or didn't care about my dry carts just skipped the line and grabbed a wet cart. One such member rushed up and grabbed a wet cart from behind me. Sometimes carts get jammed or snagged together. Usually, it's the buckles for the kiddie seats getting tangled, but sometimes it's a warp in the cart from damage. This poor member grabbed one such warped cart and it dragged its body with it. The member attempted to dislodge it. He yanked. He twisted. He shook them violently. He looked at me and demanded, "Help me get these carts separated." I offered him a dry one. Nope. He wanted that cart specifically for some reason. I abandoned my drying rag and attempted to pry the carts apart. It was like trying to separate two buffaloes in a horn lock. They refused to budge. I looked at the metal flap that allowed the carts to nest into each other. I saw where it was snagged and reached in to coax it free. I placed my other hand on the lip of the second cart to give me leverage while I untangled them. The member demanded loudly, "Come on, I'm in a hurry." He decided I was too incompetent to separate them, so he reached out to give the front cart one more tug. At that exact moment, I loosened the second cart and the front car sprang free. It launched forward, catching my thumb between it and the second, stationary, cart. I heard the pop sound of my thumb dislocating a few seconds before the pain hit me. I yanked my hand free and managed to stifle my choice of profanity with less fireable words. "Sucking sticks of saffron on a ship!" My supervisor witnessed this and still tells people it's his favorite outburst. The member just looks at me like I'm nuts. "There, all I need was a card. Was that so hard?" I'm cradling my oddly shaped hand. "Sir, I think you broke my finger." The member just shrugs, huffs, and walks into the warehouse. Looked like he forgot I existed the second he took his eyes off me. My supervisor witnessed the whole thing, but was more worried about me, not the member. He pulled me aside and radioed for eyes. Lucky or unlucky, I'm very pain tolerant. It's not the first joint I've dislocated. I've also known the easiest way to end the pain is to reset the joint. I fiddle around with my weirdly dangling thumb until I feel it click back into place. My whole thumb was swollen and turning a lovely shade of purple. My supervisor got me sent inside to write up an incident report. He sent a posse of employees into the store to find the member and sentence him to banishment. But as it was insanely busy, they never found him. By far the worst customer ever. At least I got an extra day off and a great macabre story out of it. Well, while your supervisor was well-intentioned, it was a deliberate assault, and he should have called the police immediately and had the customer arrested and booked for assault. That's what he deserved. Our next story of today's video was posted by Coming to Get You Babs. Woman demands to know tragic backstory. This happened a couple of years back, but I still cringe whenever I remember it. Throughout my teens and early adulthood, I had it pretty rough. My mental health was not the greatest, and as a result of bad coping strategies, I have severe scarring throughout my body, most noticeably on my left arm. Due to the extent of the damage, literally hundreds of keloids. Most people assume I was in an accident and have the good sense to avoid the topic. It is no secret to friends, but not exactly something I want to discuss with strangers. A good friend of mine wanted to go shopping for clothes and asked me to tag along to keep her company. I think we were both in our early 20s at the time and I still had severe social anxiety. We were having a good time, but while she was in the changing room, I wandered off by myself to browse. A little kid comes up to me and asks what happened to my arm. Kids are curious. That's fine. I'm not about to disclose the truth though, as I feel it's A. highly inappropriate and B. quite uncomfortable. So I tell him I'm not at home saying and immediately start rifling through shirts to appear busy. The kid goes away and comes back, teary-eyed, with mom in tow. She demands I explain to her child exactly what happened to my arm as they are curious. The following convo takes place. Ma'am, I don't feel comfortable talking about it. Please respect that. But my kid wants to know. That's all well and good, but I'm entitled to my privacy. What I understand is you are a rude, selfish little expletive. What followed was a veritable verbal battering as the woman got increasingly agitated and took turns calling me impolite and demanding answers. It escalated to her grabbing my arm and telling her kid to touch it as much as they wanted. At that point, I, already on the verge of a panic attack, started to freak out. I practically screamed at her. It doesn't matter whether I was a lion tamer or kidnapped by pirates. You don't get to know my life story just because you want to. My friend came back about then, having heard the commotion. She's a petted, soft-spoken creature, and I can count on one hand the number of times I've heard her raise her voice in the 30+ years we've known each other and still have fingers left. She descended on them like an avenging Valkyrie and, with language that would make a sailor blush, gave such a thorough verbal lashing the lady was rendered momentarily speechless. We took the opportunity to leave and could hear her shouting about rude kids on the way out. I was a bit shaken up at the time, but to this day, we laugh about how bad of a lion tamer I must be, though I hope, for the kids' sake, the mom learned some chill. Well, I think I just fell in love with your friend. Also, the line about lion tamers and pirates was perfect. Great story. The next story was posted by Yanala Turnala. No, Karen, I won't let you take my steak. Okay, now Karen's targeting people's food. Let's see what happened. So last year was my mom's 60th birthday. With lockdown, we couldn't do a big party, but instead I did a socially distant meal for her, my dad and me. She wanted a steak dinner with all the trimmings. I went down to the supermarket a few days beforehand. Say the supermarket has these specifically cut steaks in vacuum packs and a deal of 3 for £10. I was choosing steaks and noticed a woman close by doing the same and picking up several. I took my 3, put them in my trolley and moved on. I moved on, got the remainder of my list, then thought of getting wine. I moved away from my trolley while choosing. When I turned back, that customer from before was leaning over my trolley. Me. Hi, this is my trolley. Her. Oh, I know. I'm just taking one of your steaks. Me. Why? I chose those. You were there too. I saw you pick some up. Her. Right, but I got 14 and I need one more. Me. I have 3. You're not taking one of mine. I deliberately pulled my trolley away from her at this point. Her. You have to. I need it for the Monty deal. Me. And I need it to feed 3 people. No. Her. Red in the face by now. I go get the manager then. Me. Go ahead. She runs off and I finish choosing my wine. 5 minutes later, I'm waiting to get checked out when the lady comes over with the manager. She stood back with this smug look I could see through her mask while the manager came over. Manager. Ma'am, this lady says you stole one of her steaks. Is that true? Me. No. I picked up 3 at the freezer and later on found her leaning over my trolley and saying she'd take one. She said she needs it for the Monty deal. The manager sighed. I knew it. She does this. I'm sorry to trouble you. Enjoy your day. Me. You too. Good luck with her. The manager sighed again and walked away. As I checked out, I saw him guiding her away from the till points. A few minutes later, I heard a "Security to the meat aisle" announcement as I was leaving. The steaks were lovely, but not worth stealing from someone else's trolley. I'll take one of yours so I get my deal, for I have already 14 in my cart. What are these Karens smoking? I want a piece of that drugs too. Not to jack something from a cart that's not mine or steal anything, but I want to be that confident and secure about myself. Unbelievable. The next story of today's video was posted by this rKush. Get out of the parking spot. Your friend isn't getting it. So this happened a few years ago in a certain large mall in the US in the parking garage. I had gone to the mall on my own just to get a few things but didn't realize it was the Chinese New Year and the mall was holding a large celebration for it. The parking garage was packed. I drove around for 15 to 20 minutes trying to find a spot when I got stopped behind a car with its turn signal on, trying to move into an open spot. What was weird was the long line of cars across from it and all the honking. I looked out the other side of my windshield and there she was. A Karen in all of the asymmetrical Bob glory standing in the open spot, waving the car with his turn signal on the way. The passenger in the car in front of me was yelling at Karen, so I rolled down my window to hear what was going on. The passenger was yelling at this woman to get out of the freaking parking spot. And Karen just yells back, "I'm holding this spot for my friend. She's a couple of cars back in the line." And gestures to the line now building up behind me with a simpering smile. I was already annoyed, but this was just the icing on the GD cake. I threw my car in park, opened my door, and stood up to yell over the top of the car. "Lady, your friend is behind me and God knows how many other cars. You are holding up the entire garage with this crap and ruining other people's days. So freaking move, cause your friend is not getting the spot." Karen looked at me like she only just realized other people were there beside her and the car trying to pull in, scoffed, realized I wasn't going anywhere anytime soon, and stomped away to, I'm guessing, be an a-hole somewhere else. Guys, as satisfying as it is to yell at entitled Karens, pissing off people in parking garages is never a good idea. Too much can happen to a car when you leave it alone for a long time. That applies both to Karen and to people wanting to push Karen out of the way. Either side might decide to take revenge. Sometimes, just pointing that out to people is enough for them to get off it and move on. The next story was posted by Lurid Fox with the title, "I want to keep my checks." This happened a couple of times over many years. After I had scanned her 1,000 items and hit total, then she decides to start digging in her purse to find her checkbook. And after a few minutes, finds it and then started to slowly fill it out. Of course, a line has been built and people looked like their life was slowly draining out of them. I felt it too. I ran the check through the register, it scanned it or whatever, then put it in the bottom of the cash drawer. I then handed her the receipt, then she held her hand back out. I'm not entirely sure why, because I wanted her to go, not give me a high five. She just at me and said, "Where's my check?" I looked at her confused. "In the drawer, where I just put it after the transaction." "I want my check back," she yelled. "Ma'am, we have to keep the check in to deposit in the bank, in case there are any transaction errors." She was shaking her head no the entire time. "No, I have to get it back, otherwise somebody could steal my identity." I tried to assure her that from the register we put it in the safe at night. Then in the morning the armed guard takes it to the bank for deposit. She would not accept it and said that if she could not get it back then she would return her purchase and get it back to buy things elsewhere. This must have been a power play for her, but she messed up. You see, I was on my last week at that job and was ready to stop giving a crap. I asked for a receipt, which I got, put up her transaction and hit void previous transaction. I grabbed her check, the receipt, and the void receipt and handed it to her. There, I have voided the transaction and returned your check. Good luck at the next store. I then started removing her items from the bags and making a stack beside me on the floor. She looked dumbfounded, jaw dropped. "No, I purchased those. Those are mine." I, kindly, with the most customer service voice I could muster, replied, "You told me that if you could not have your check back, you would buy things elsewhere, and I already told you we were not able to give it back, so I voided your purchase and now you have your check back." I looked at the next person in line. I can help the next person. That beautiful customer stepped forward, right next to the lady, pre-COVID, and started a conversation about some cereal she bought. By that time, the manager had come over, and the lady began yelling at him. Okay, he ended up bringing her items back up in the aisle next to mine, and she paid by check, but was again unable to keep the check. I could hear it all well. In fact, half the aisle was watching their show of interaction. The best part was when she was demanding her check back. Again, he asked if she wanted him to void it out so she could go elsewhere. She nearly exploded, ripped the receipt out of his hand, threw the bags in her cart and breaking things by the sound and stormed out yelling. The cherry on top was that on her way out, she turned back to yell more at us and ran into the door frame with her cart. As she was looking back, not where she was going, laughter erupted from a few kids nearby. Great day. I got talked to, but I was almost out. So meh. Guys, there cannot be a better example of ignorance and stupidity. What a moron. Now we're gonna wrap up today's video with another story from Warrior White. Karen insults my wedding ring to my face. Backstory. When I first met the man who became my husband, we were not well off. He moved across the country to come live with me and had not a penny to his name. He proposed to me without a ring, which I was perfectly okay with. It was incredibly romantic. He popped the question spontaneously, and it's still one of the happiest days of my life. He promised when he was better off financially, He would buy any ring that I wanted. A while after our engagement, the day came where he surprised me by taking me to a jewelry store. He had saved a $5,000 budget, plus a little wiggle room for some credit if needed. He told me to go nuts. It was so fun and romantic. I tried on dozens of rings, diamonds, platinum bands, lesser gemstones, etc. Then I saw a set of steel/titanium rings. They were originally designed for the grooms, not for the brides, but I had never been a big diamond fan and I preferred simple flat rings to mounted stones. I ended up falling in love with a super simple black titanium ring with angle grooves. It was gorgeous. It was exactly what I wanted. And best of all, they were cheap, less than $200. Husband liked them too, so much that we got him a matching band. We decided to use them as both the engagement ring and the actual wedding ring. We had to special order them as the jewelry store didn't stock our sizes on hand. I got a surprise when they arrived to find that my husband had requested engraving on the inside of mine. It said, "My precious." I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I love that ring to death. I wear it to this day and it still makes me smile. Now the story. This took place 7 years after I got married. I worked at a chain sandwich shop where we assembled the sandwiches in front of the customer. My store was next to a yoga studio, CrossFit training, and plastic surgeon's office. So we got our fair share of Karens and holier-than-thou rich people. It wasn't uncommon for somebody to drive up in a $100,000 sports car, toting a Prada bag and sunglasses that cost more than my rent. They almost always came in to order the pickiest, complicated subs, then complained about the price. We were quite used to this kind of people, but this lady took the cake. Enter the entitled Karen and her bratty teenage daughter. They looked the part to a T. They proceeded to order the usual complicated/picky subs, asking tons of questions about the nutritional info of every item. To assembling the food, we wear clear plastic food service gloves. Because my ring is flush to my hand and won't rip the gloves, I had approval from the manager to wear it at work. While assembling this woman's sandwich, her teenage daughter notices my ring. Entitled daughter, "Oh, that's cute. Is that a promise ring?" Me, "No, that's my wedding ring." Karen, scoffing loudly, "Are you serious?" Me, "Yes, it's both my engagement and wedding ring. It has been for several years." Karen looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You have a cheap husband." I balked at her command but tried to remain professional. "That may be your opinion, ma'am, but I happen to like this ring. I picked it out myself." Karen, "Then you have terrible taste in jewelry." She then turned to her daughter, "If your father had given me a ring that ugly, I would have left him on the spot. Make sure your future husband gets you a ring that at least has diamonds in it." I was floored. I usually get tons of compliments about my ring. I never expected someone to insult it, let alone straight to my face. I was so flabbergasted I couldn't even continue working on her food. I excused myself and went into the back and told my coworker to finish them up for me. I couldn't even stand to be around them. When I told my manager the whole story, he almost didn't believe me. We had to watch the security footage to prove it had happened. Never saw that entitled woman again. Glad she didn't come back. I still shake with rage every time I recount the story. I still have that ring on my hand today, and it's still the most beautiful, wonderful ring I could ever hope for. I love my husband very much. He's the best thing that ever happened to me, and that's a matter far more than any jewelry. That's just gross, and it's very sad for me to see a materialistic, nasty woman passing all her orphanage onto her child. Terrible parenting. And that brings me to the end of our videos today. Hope you reach your eargasm with rKush. Good day, everyone.